Lieutenant Audie L. Murphy had fought in 7 major campaigns of World War II. Audie Murphy lived a life that hardly seems real. He was a war hero, a movie star, and a man people never stopped talking about. To the public, he looked fearless and steady. But behind that image, his life carried pain, pressure, love, and many questions that never fully went away. His career made him famous, but his private life was far more complicated, especially when it came to the woman who stood beside him through so much of it. He was admired by millions, yet much of his real story stayed hidden behind the headlines. Even after his death, the curiosity did not disappear. Join us as we take a look at Audie Murphy's life, his rise to fame, his marriage, and the questions that stayed behind long after he was gone. A childhood marked by loss. Audie Leon Murphy was born on June 20, 1925, in Kingston, Texas. He was the 7th of 12 children in a poor sharecropping family. Life was hard from the start. Money was always short, and comfort was rare. His father drifted in and out of the family's life before finally leaving for good. Audie grew up fast. He left school in the 5th grade and picked cotton for $1 a day to help support the family. He also became skilled with a rifle, hunting small game to help feed his brothers and sisters. Even as a boy, he was known for keeping to himself. He was quiet, moody, and had a quick temper. The biggest blow came in 1941 when his mother died of endocarditis and pneumonia. That loss stayed with him for the rest of his life. After her death, Audie took whatever work he could find, including jobs at a radio repair shop and a general store. The family was also torn apart further when his 3 youngest siblings were placed in a children's home. Years later, Murphy showed just how deeply his mother's death affected him. He said, "She died when I was 16. When she passed away, she took something of me with her. It seems I've been searching for it ever since." That pain shaped him in ways people around him could not always see. It also helps explain why, not long after, he was ready to take a path that would change his life forever. The teenager who forced his way into war. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Audie wanted to join the military. He was still very young, and physically, he did not look ready for war at all. In fact, the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps all turned him down at first because he was underage and underweight. That says a lot about how slight he was at the time. His rough childhood had not left him strong and well-fed. Still, he did not give up. With help from one of his sisters, his birth date was changed on paper so he could appear old enough to enlist. He later admitted that his age had been falsified. He even joked about it in a 1950 interview, saying, "The doctor back home couldn't remember exactly when I was born," and then adding with a smile, "So, I was 18. On June 30, 1942, he was finally accepted into the U.S. Army. From there, things began to move quickly. He went through basic training at Camp Walters and then advanced infantry training at Fort Meade. During training, he earned the marksman badge with rifle component bar and the expert badge with bayonet component bar. That fit the life he had already lived. The rifle skills he had learned as a poor boy in Texas now became part of his military path. But training was only the beginning. In February 1943, he was shipped to Casablanca in French Morocco and assigned to Company B, 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. After the Axis surrender in French Tunisia in May, his division helped handle prisoners and then went through hard training for the Allied landings in Sicily. Audie moved up fast. He became private first class on May 7th and corporal on July 15th. That kind of rise did not happen by accident. It came because he was proving himself again and again. The boy who once picked cotton and hunted for food was now stepping into one of the biggest wars in history. But his real test had not even started yet. Once he reached the battlefield, everything about his life would change. He kept coming back. Audie Murphy first saw major action during the Allied invasion of Sicily in July 1943. When the 3rd Infantry landed at Licata, he was serving as a division runner. During a scouting patrol near Canicattì, he killed 2 Italian officers who were trying to escape. Soon after, he was sidelined by illness for about a week, but he returned to duty. That became a pattern during the war.
He kept getting sick or wounded, but he kept coming back. In September 1943, he took part in the mainland landing at Salerno. During a scouting mission along the Volturno River, he and 2 other soldiers were ambushed. 1 man was killed, but Murphy and the other survivor fought back and killed 5 Germans. The next month, near Mignano Montelungo Hill, 193, he and his company stopped an attack by 7 German soldiers, killing 3 and capturing 4. By December, he had been promoted to sergeant. In January 1944, Murphy became a staff sergeant, but he was soon hospitalized with malaria in Naples. That caused him to miss the first landing at Anzio. He returned later that month and fought in the First Battle of Cisterna, after which he became platoon sergeant in Company B. In March, while taking shelter in an abandoned farmhouse, Murphy and his platoon spotted a German tank. After his men killed the crew, Murphy crawled out alone and destroyed the tank with rifle grenades. That action earned him the Bronze Star with V device. Not long after, he was struck by malaria again and spent another week in the hospital. By May 1944, Murphy had received the Combat Infantryman Badge, and later he was awarded a bronze oak leaf cluster for his Bronze Star. By the time American forces liberated Rome, he had already built a reputation for bravery that kept growing with every battle. But the battles ahead in France would push him even further and help turn him into a legend. France made him a war hero. In August 1944, Audie Murphy took part in the Allied invasion of southern France, where some of his most famous actions took place. On August 15th, after landing near Ramatuelle, his platoon came under attack in a vineyard. Murphy grabbed a machine gun and fired back, killing 2 Germans and wounding another. Then, 2 enemy soldiers came out of a house pretending to surrender. When Murphy's best friend answered them, they shot and killed him. Murphy charged the house alone under direct fire, killed 6 Germans, wounded 2, and took 11 prisoner. That action earned him the Distinguished Service Cross. Later that month, he fought in the offensive at Montélimar. In September, he received his first Purple Heart after a mortar blast wounded his heel. Then in October at Lomé Quarry, he attacked a German machine gun position, killing 4 and wounding 3. That earned him his first Silver Star. Just 3 days later, he crawled forward alone with a radio and directed his men for an hour while the Germans fired directly at him. By the end of that fight, 15 Germans were dead and 35 wounded, and Murphy received an oak leaf cluster for his Silver Star. On October 14th, Murphy was given a battlefield commission to second lieutenant, but the cost was rising.
On October 26th, while moving toward Bruyere, his platoon came under sniper fire. Murphy captured 2 enemy soldiers before being shot in the hip. He shot the sniper back, but the wound was serious and kept him out of combat until January. By then, Murphy had already gone far beyond what anyone expected from the poor Texas boy who once could not even get accepted into the service. But his biggest test was still ahead, and it would come in the freezing battlefields of early 1945. Holtzwihr and the Medal of Honor. In January 1945, Audie Murphy returned to his platoon in the Colmar area after recovering enough to fight again. On January 24th, the 3rd Division moved to Holtzwihr, where German forces launched a powerful counterattack. Murphy was wounded in both legs on January 26th, but he still took part in the battle that would define his legacy. As German troops and tanks moved forward, Murphy ordered his men to pull back into safer positions. Then, he stayed behind alone near his command post. A nearby tank destroyer had been hit and set on fire after its crew escaped. Murphy used his carbine, directed artillery fire by radio, and then climbed onto the burning tank destroyer to fire its .50 caliber machine gun at the advancing Germans. For about an hour, he stood there in full view under direct enemy fire. Even though he was already wounded, he kept firing until he ran out of ammunition. He killed or wounded around 50 German soldiers. After that, he rejoined his men and helped drive the attack back. He refused to leave them even while his own wounds were being treated. For what he did that day, Murphy received the Medal of Honor. Later, when asked why he had taken on so many enemy soldiers alone, he gave a simple answer: "They were killing my friends."
That line says everything about why he fought. His wartime service brought him every U.S. Army Combat Award for valor available during World War II, along with major honors from France and Belgium. On June 2, 1945, near Salzburg, Austria, Lieutenant General A.M. Patch presented him with the Medal of Honor and the Legion of Merit. Soon after, Murphy returned to Texas and was discharged in September 1945 as a first lieutenant with a 50% disability classification. The war had made his name known across America, but the next chapter of his life would bring a very different kind of spotlight, when the war followed him home. When Audie Murphy came home from the war, the fighting did not truly leave him. On the outside, people saw a hero. They saw medals, praise, and a young man who had done things most people could barely imagine. But in private, he was carrying pain that followed him into everyday life. He dealt with insomnia, deep depression, nightmares, headaches, and even vomiting. A medical examination on the 17th of June, 1947, showed just how much he was still suffering. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow, which says a lot about how unsafe he still felt, even at home. The war had ended, but his mind had not caught up. At the time, people did not use the term PTSD. Back then, it was called battle fatigue or shell shock. Murphy himself lived through it every day. He took sleeping pills to try to keep the nightmares away. Later, in the mid-1960s, he realized he had become dependent on the sedative Placidil. Instead of pretending everything was fine, he faced it head-on. He locked himself alone in a hotel room for a week and broke the addiction. The people around him also saw how deeply the war had changed him. His natural moodiness became even stronger, and friends and coworkers sometimes found his behavior alarming. For a time, he tried to pour some of that pain into writing. After leaving the Army, he briefly found relief in poetry.
One of his poems, The Crosses Grow on Anzio, appeared in his book To Hell and Back, though it was credited to a made-up character named Kerrigan. He did not hide from what combat had done to him. In fact, he later spoke openly about it to help others. He called on the government to pay more attention to the emotional wounds of war and to give better health care to veterans, especially those coming back from Korea and Vietnam. That side of Audie Murphy matters because while the world was celebrating him, he was privately trying to survive a battle no one could see. And at the same time, another new chapter was beginning. When Hollywood Calling. Audie Murphy did not have to chase Hollywood for long. In 1945, James Cagney saw him featured in Life magazine as the most decorated soldier and decided to bring him to Hollywood. Cagney gave him a place to stay, helped him get acting lessons, and tried to guide him into the film business. Their working relationship ended in 1947 after a personal disagreement, but Murphy always appreciated the help he got in those early years, even after Cagney later said, "We had no use for him, really. He couldn't act." Murphy kept working. He trained with acting coach Estelle Harmon and improved his speech by practicing lines from William Shakespeare and William Saroyan. While living at Terry Hunt's athletic club, he slowly built the connections that helped him move forward. One of the most important people he met was writer David Speck McClure, who later worked with him on To Hell and Back. McClure helped him land a small role in Texas, Brooklyn, and Heaven in 1948. Around the same time, Murphy was dating actress Wanda Hendricks, and through her talent agent, he got another small part in Beyond Glory. His real break came with Bad Boy in 1949, which gave him his first leading role. The film's backers would not support the project unless Murphy got the lead, so the studio finally took the chance. That decision changed everything. Universal then signed him to a 7-year contract. In 1950, Murphy played Billy the Kid in The Kid from Texas. He also made Sierra with Wanda Hendricks, who had by then become his wife, and Kansas Raiders, where he played Jesse James. So even while he was still learning how to act, Murphy was already becoming a real Hollywood name. But as his career began to rise, his private life was starting to grow more complicated. Love, fame, and a troubled home. Audie Murphy and Wanda Hendricks had been seeing each other since 1946. Before they even properly met, he had seen her on the cover of Coronet magazine and wanted to know her better. He was drawn to her right away, and soon the two of them became one of those couples people noticed. They married in 1949, and from the outside, they looked like a strong Hollywood pair. They acted in films. They were both attractive.
And together, they had that kind of public image that got attention. But the marriage did not last. In fact, it fell apart very quickly. Much of the trouble came from the trauma Murphy was carrying after the war. He suffered from flashbacks, fear, and unstable moods. He kept a gun close, and, according to Hendricks, he would sometimes point it at her during arguments. That alone tells you how tense and frightening things had become inside the home. Murphy also wanted her to leave her acting career, which added even more pressure to the relationship. After only 7 months, Wanda left their home. Their separation was later made legal in 1950, and the divorce was final in 1951. The breakup caused a lot of talk, and the attention around their dramatic marriage and split also affected Hendricks's career. Still, she kept working and did not step away from acting after the divorce. Murphy's personal life grew even messier after that first marriage ended. He gained a reputation for chasing women and having brief affairs with actresses.
One example mentioned was actress Peggy Castle, with whom he had a short romance that lasted only about a month. His friend and co-star, Jack Elam, once said, "Murphy liked women and pursued them with a flaming passion for a few days." Elam added that Murphy's feelings often faded after only a few weeks. By this point, his private life was becoming harder to ignore. And then, almost immediately after one marriage ended, he stepped into another. One that looked steadier on the surface, but came with its own weight. Pamela Archer became his second chance. Just 4 days after his divorce from Wanda Hendricks became final, Audie Murphy married Pamela Opal Lee Archer on April 23, 1951, at Highland Park Methodist Church in Dallas, Texas. Pamela, often called Pam, was a former airline stewardess from Texas who worked for Braniff Airlines when she met him. She had a crush on him, and the introduction happened through a Braniff pilot who knew them both. Unlike the world Murphy was now living in through movies and fame, Pamela preferred a quieter life. She was not drawn to Hollywood parties or all the noise that came with celebrity. She liked a more homely, settled kind of life, and that seemed to match what Murphy wanted too. He had already seen what fame could bring, and it appears that with Pam, he saw something calmer. Their wedding was covered by news cameras from Fort Worth's WBAP-TV station, and people in Texas followed the story closely. For many, it looked like America's decorated hero had found a real second chance at love. Over time, they built a family together and had 2 sons, Terry Michael, born on March 14, 1952, and James Shannon, nicknamed Skipper, born on March 23, 1954. These boys gave Murphy the family life he had long been missing since his own hard childhood. Pamela became a steady presence beside him while his film career kept growing. She raised the children and helped create a home life that gave him some sense of normalcy. The family lived in California, where Murphy also bred quarter horses at Audie Murphy Ranch in what is now Menifee, California, and at Murphy Ranch in Pima County, Arizona. From the outside, this looked like a happier and more settled chapter. Pam was often described as someone who understood the man behind the fame. She saw not only the war hero and movie actor, but also the person carrying wounds other people could not see. Their marriage lasted for 2 decades, and she stood beside him through professional highs and personal struggles. Still, even in this second marriage, the problems he carried from the war did not simply disappear. They followed him into this home, too. And by then, his career was moving into its biggest years, from soldier to screen star. Murphy's acting career began in 1948 and quickly gained momentum. In 1951, Universal lent him to MGM for The Red Badge of Courage, directed by John Huston, where he played the lead. He later worked with Huston again on The Unforgiven in 1960. In the years that followed, he appeared in films like The Duel at Silver Creek, Column South, Tumbleweed, and Destry. As his career grew, Murphy found his strongest place in westerns. That became the genre that suited him best. He was not the most flashy star on screen, but he had a steady and believable presence. He could play tough men who also seemed to carry something heavy inside, and that gave his roles more weight. A major turning point came with To Hell and Back in 1955, based on his own memoir. At first, Murphy did not want to play himself, which is easy to understand since the story forced him to relive war, loss, and painful memories. But he agreed, and the film became the biggest hit in Universal Studios history at the time. To promote it, he appeared on television shows like What's My Line, Toast of the Town, and Colgate Comedy Hour. His work with director Jesse Hibbs was so successful that they made several more films together, including Walk the Proud Land, Joe Butterfly, World in My Corner, and Ride a Crooked Trail. Murphy kept working steadily through the late 1950s. He appeared in Night Passage, took the title role in The Quiet American, and won praise for No Name on the Bullet, where he played a hired killer instead of a simple hero. That role showed he could do more than people expected, and as his film career moved forward, so did the personal life behind it. The public hero, the private struggle. In the early 1960s, Audie Murphy remained busy in film and television. He appeared in the 1960 StarTime episode, The Man, and also gave his time to 3 episodes of The Big Picture, a U.S. Army television series. His work on that project earned him the 1960 Outstanding Civilian Service Medal. One episode, Broken Bridge, showed him visiting military bases in Germany, Italy, Turkey, and New Mexico. He also kept making westerns and action films. In 1961, writer Claire Huffaker worked on 7 Ways from Sundown and Posse from Hell. Murphy's longtime Hollywood friends, Willard and Mary Willingham, also worked with him on several projects, including Whispering Smith, Battle at Bloody Beach, Bullet for a Bad Man, Arizona Raiders, Gunpoint, and 40 Guns to Apache Pass. In 1965, Murphy made The Texican in Spain and Trunk to Cairo in Israel. His long connection with director Bud Boddicker also continued. Murphy had appeared in The Cimarron Kid in 1951, and Boddicker later wrote the script for Murphy's final film, A Time for Dying, in 1969. At the same time, Murphy still carried the public image of a war hero, actor, songwriter, rancher, and family man. He also returned to military service through the Texas Army National Guard after the Korean War began in 1950. He served as a captain, trained recruits, and allowed the Guard to use his name and image in recruiting. He wanted to serve in Korea, but his division was never sent. Because of his film work, he moved in and out of active status, and in 1956 he was promoted to major. To the public, all of this made him look steady, successful, and dependable. But behind that image was still a man struggling with nightmares, fear, and memories he could not escape. And that gap between the hero people saw and the pain he carried in private is what makes the next part of his life matter so much. The trouble before the tragedy. In the later years of Audie Murphy's life, the image people saw in public was still strong, but behind it, things were getting harder. He put a lot of money into horse racing, and his horses raced at Del Mar. He also invested heavily in that world, but the gambling and the spending hurt his finances badly. In 1968, he said he had lost $260,000 in an Algerian oil deal, and he was also dealing with the Internal Revenue Service over unpaid taxes. Even with all that pressure, he still refused to do commercials for alcohol and cigarettes because he cared about the example he might set for young people.
At the same time, he was still known for having a fast and fierce temper. That side of him followed him for years. In May 1970, he was arrested in Burbank, California, after a dispute with a dog and assault with intent to commit murder. He was accused of firing a shot at the man, but he denied it, and he was later cleared of the charges. Then, not long after that, everything came to a sudden end on May 28, 1971. Murphy was killed in a private plane crash in bad weather near Roanoke, Virginia. There was rain, fog, clouds, and zero visibility. The plane went into the side of a mountain, and everyone on board died, including the pilot and 4 other passengers. Murphy had been traveling to inspect a plant in Martinsville for a possible investment. The crash shocked the public. He was only 46 years old. On June 7, 1971, he was buried with military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. Big names attended, including George H.W. Bush and William Westmoreland. President Richard Nixon said, "Murphy epitomized the gallantry in the action of America's fighting men." Even in death, he remained a symbol of bravery. But for Pamela, the real struggle was only beginning. After Audie, Pamela carried the weight. After Audie Murphy died, Pamela Murphy was left with far more than grief. She was also left with debt, and it changed her life completely. She had to move out of their large home and into a small apartment. She then took a clerk job at the Sepulveda Veterans Administration Hospital in Los Angeles, where she would remain for 35 years. That alone says a lot about her strength. She did not run from the mess that had been left behind. Instead, she faced it. It took her nearly 10 years, but she paid off all of Audie's debts. As one account put it, nobody would ever say Audie Murphy welched on a deal. Even while carrying that burden, she kept defending the man she had loved. Money was so tight that she could barely visit his grave. So, she asked a friend in Washington to place flowers there for her every Veterans Day. Over time, Pamela became much more than Audie Murphy's widow. At the VA hospital, she built her own name and her own place. She worked as a patient liaison and treated veterans with real care. Many of them loved her for it. Men would come up to her with tears in their eyes and ask for a hug once they learned who she was. "Thank you," they would tell her again and again. At first, those hugs were more for Audie, but later, they were for her. She helped veterans get through the system, fought for them when they were ignored, and did not worry about stepping on toes. If someone had been waiting too long, she would take him by the hand and walk him right into the doctor's office. She got reprimanded for it, but she did not care. In one telling, they were her boys, Audie's war buddies, and she was going to take care of them. In 2002, when budget cuts nearly pushed her out, veterans protested until she stayed. Pamela kept working until 2007, when she was 87. She died peacefully on April 8, 2010, survived by her sons Terry and James. By then, people were no longer only remembering the hero she married. They were also remembering the woman who stood by him, carried the weight after he was gone, and quietly showed everyone what loyalty really looked like. Do you think Pamela Murphy's loyalty says more about her love for Audie or about the strength of the woman she was on her own? And after hearing Audie Murphy's full story, what stands out to you more, his public hero image
or the private struggles he carried behind it? Share your thoughts in the comments below.